Hey guys, Troy here. Welcome to my kitchen sink. I am here for a reason. I have been asked a couple of times to show how I go through pen cleaning. And quite honestly, I've got a lot of pen cleaning to do because I've went through my collection, I went through Matthew's collection, my wife's collection, and all the pens that need to be cleaned are right in here. Usually I have them in little things like this, which is just an old Chinese food container. Actually, I use this too at the end because I have to put my pens somewhere after they're cleaned so that they can dry. So, here are some of the basic things that you're going to need to do to clean your pens if you have to do it in mass. A bulb syringe. This is like a 2-ounce bulb syringe. Comes in very handy. A second one where you just simply cut off the tip and make it a broader hole is going to be very handy, especially for pens that have a very narrow attachment for where an ink cartridge would go in, or if you have a removable nib. A blunt tip syringe occasionally can come in handy. When you've got stubborn ink that just won't come out of a cartridge or a converter, then this is what I use. You want to be near a water source. Right here I'm at my sink. This is an old 1950 cast iron sink that came with the house. You can see that the sink has been well worn over the past 70 years or so. And you want to have something for a plug for that sink. You want to have it so you can guard anything from going down in, yet can still drain water. I can tell you, I've lost a 1.1 stub nib down this very drain because I had this thing cocked up to the side like this and it went whoop, right down in. So you want to keep it in proper. Obviously you need water, so I've got a cup of warm water. I just used a Dixie cup. I used to have a big old broken mug where the handle broke off until somebody broke the rest of the mug and I couldn't use it, and a little bit of pen flush. Now I've got a video on pen flush. I make it by the gallon. You can tell that I probably need to make some more here fairly soon. I'll put a link to the video that tells you how to make your own, because quite honestly, I don't want to pay $11 for a little bottle. I'd rather spend pennies and make it by the gallon. That makes it so you can use it a lot more liberally than you normally would, so you don't conserve it so much. And also, I have over here a small ultrasonic cleaner I've been using for a long time that works very, very well. And I get to fill it and to drain it as often as I want because I kind of make my own pen flush. So, let's go ahead and get right to the thing, and I'll explain step by step. It may be a little noisier in here. You'll hear the ultrasonic cleaner going. My dogs may bark. The doorbell may ring. The phone may ring. But there's nobody home except me at the moment, so this is my opportunity to try to show you some stuff. One other tip that I wanted to share with you before I get started is always wear like a shirt you don't mind getting wet or stained, or a smock or something like that, something you want to paint in. This just happens to be a nice black shirt. I've got white shirts with ink splatters all over them, so ones that I wish I hadn't had that problem with. So here we go. I'm going to start with a cartridge converter pen. Here is one of my wife's pens. That I believe this is from Woodshed Pen Company right here. I'm just going to take it apart, and you can tell that it is empty. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that this is run clean. I just put the converter in my hand, I run the water a little bit and run the converter back and forth a little bit. Now she ran this sucker pretty dry, and you can tell that there's a little bit of still ink residual there. So what I do is I take a bulb syringe, and I use somewhat warm water, but I run the bulb syringe in through this thing a couple of times until it starts to get a little lighter than you normally would see. Alright, that's not bad right there. So I'm going to plop this into over into my ultrasonic cleaner. You don't have to do that, but personally I do because I want to make sure it gets a little cleaner. What I'm going to show you will get pens good enough to be considered clean that you should be happy with when you go to put them on your shelf. Alright, so let's go ahead and work on the next one. Taking it apart, cartridge converter. Oh, this one happens to be a cartridge. This is an old Cross pen. And this one here is one that gave me a fit, and I just decided that I wasn't going to continue to work with it. I don't necessarily need a cross cartridge, but if you wanted to flush it out and reuse it, I'm going to show you that technique, so it's not a bad one to have chosen. So what I do is I get a blunt tip syringe, I insert it inside the cartridge with water, and I squirt water through, and you can see the ink is actually vacating that cartridge. So anytime you have a cartridge you want to reuse, let's say you got a vintage pen that had a vintage cartridge, or you just don't have any more cartridges. Waterman CF's a good example. They don't sell brand new Waterman CF cartridges anymore, but if you can find an old one and you want to reuse it, same thing for Esterbrook, that kind of thing, an old proprietary cartridge. You're just too cheap to continue to purchase them new. Then what you can do is do exactly what I'm doing in here. I see that there's a clump of ink that's in there. You can probably see that here. You would just want to continue to flush that out until you actually were able to break that down a little bit, this particular one here. So that might explain why that cross didn't write quite as well as I'd hoped, but there you go. See, it clumped up a little bit around that ball, that agitator ball, and it's still got a little bit of a clump in there. So anyway, that's an old cross cartridge, and I'm just going to probably chuck that one because I do have more cross cartridges and I do have some cross converters. In the meantime, I've got this section here. What I'm going to do is flush it out some, just like you saw earlier. See how bad that is? That's why you want to do this at a sink. That's why you want to do this where you have water supply. That's why you want to have a dark shirt on. And that's flowing a little clearer than it was. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and throw that in my ultrasonic cleaner. Generally, I'll get about 5 of them in the ultrasonic before I go ahead and turn it on. Let's go to a different kind. Hey, Visconti Homo sapiens. Now this one here, the nib, should be able to just twist right out. See that? Just like that. Alright, that nib is sufficiently rinsed where I can just throw it in my ultrasonic cleaner. And you got a couple different ways you can work on cleaning this up. You can do this, or you can use the power vac system itself. So you would unscrew this and pull it up, push it down. It's going to suck in a whole lot of ink, but you can see where it also expelled some too. Another way of handling that is also filling this blunt tip syringe and doing like this here. You just keep working on that until she starts to run clear. Sort of like that. It's getting there. In theory, you could also use the bulb syringe, but quite honestly, I prefer, for operations like this. There. That's now flowing fairly clear. I'm going to set that aside for the nib. One of the things that you're going to find rather difficult too, though, is lever fillers. Fortunately, Esterbrook, for those of you who like Esterbrook's, it's really the same kind of deal as that Visconti was, because you have the removable nib on an Esterbrook. And you're going to get ink on your fingers, folks, so don't plan on staying clean. You're also going to find that some inks are more stubborn than others. You know, obviously the ever-dreaded Noodler's Bay State Blue. I found some Robert Oster inks tend to be very stubborn to get out, a little difficult to clean. So I'm going to just take that Renew Point nib, I'm going to throw that into my ultrasonic cleaner. I got about 5 of them in there now, so I'm just going to go ahead and run it. This one you would do exactly like I just did. On that Homo sapiens. Different filling mechanism, but same kind of concept. You've got that reservoir that's now open. And you can see there's a whole lot of blue ink that's coming out of that. This takes time, folks. It's not something that gets done really quick. You want to be careful with this blunt tip syringe, because when you're poking it inside a lever filler with a bladder, keep in mind, this is, though it's blunt, it's still kind of sharp, and you can, if you're not gentle with it, you can still tear up some of that sac and have to end up resacking it. And I do that till it runs clear. That gets a whole lot cleaner than most lever fillers ever will, just by doing the lever. Alright, so let's go ahead and hose down the sink. That's one of the things I like about having a sink with a sprayer. Even though this is an old sink, that's one of the reasons I put on this nice, expensive new faucet. Now, here is one. Here's an old Wing Sung. That is an Aerometric filler. Big, beautiful nib. It writes great. Unfortunately, though, it's an Aerometric filler, which is a little difficult to clean. Sometimes you can take that cage right off, and you can on this one, I know. And there's not much you can do about this. Now, you see it's got some ink? Well, you're going to squeeze it in and out. This is one of the things about lever fillers and Aerometric fillers that gets really boring. In, out. You suck in ink in, water in. You can see that ink bladder has gotten darker because it had water coming in. But you see all that ink there? That is from this pen. Occasionally, if you have one that's really, really stubborn, one like this, because I know it's a friction fit nib, if I'm short on time, or I'm just really annoyed of constantly doing, you know, the squeeze, in, out, getting nowhere, a couple of things that I'll do. Sometimes I'll just use some of my cleaner. That's a 3-minute cycle over on that ultrasonic cleaner. It's done. So sometimes I'll get some pen flush up in this thing. Sometimes you can shake it up a little bit. Anytime you use pen flush, though, you want to flush out the flush. Okay, so I've got that flush there. I'm going to leave it. Pen flush, it's okay if it gets a little dirty. But you can see we're making a little bit of progress on that. So it's a little cleaner than it was. Now, you can sheet if you have to. And on this particular pen, you can, if you had to, you could just remove it. The breather tube right along with it, the pen feed, and the nib can all come out. And when I do that and rinse it off, I will not run it through my ultrasonic cleaner generally, because I'm able to just go ahead and clean it out this way. This is where you want to have that sink stopped up very nicely. So here you're back to the same kind of concept we had earlier, remember? Where I can use that blunt tip syringe and flush that out. But going just like this, that water's getting nice and clean. Just spilling it in, flushing it out, squeezing it out. I realize not everything's totally in camera frame because it's hard to keep it all in frame. But here's what else I like to do. I fill up this cut-off syringe. You come in and you can stick that here, and you can try to clean out that breather tube a little bit. See, I'm actually flowing some there, that way. Now if I want to, I can throw this on my ultrasonic. But this is actually a great writing pen. I like it. I've got two of them. One writes much better than the other. which is why I have two, because I wasn't happy with how the first one wrote, so I bought a second one to see if it would be any different. Alright, I'm probably going to just throw that in the ultrasonic for the next round. These are the pens that I just took out of my ultrasonic cleaner. Or at least the sections that I took out of the ultrasonic cleaner. You don't have to take them all apart. Just for cleaning purposes, you're good like this. You don't have to totally rip them apart. But here's what I will do. Fresh water. Alright, each of these went through my ultrasonic cleaner. A little bit of blue tint to it. Now it's flowing clear. That's good. That right there is good and clean. I'll set it aside. Alright, same thing here. See how much easier that is to flow clear now? Alright, good. I'm going to call that clean. Here's the next one. This came out of the Visconti. Well, I'm not going to use that same one. I'm going to use this one. And try to get it inside of this big old bulb syringe. There we go. Oh, it's flowing clear. I'm going to call that clean. I'm going to take this one. I need more water. Alright, so I'm going to look at that. Still a lot of nasty ink inside that one. If it's a real stubborn ink, or highly saturated ink, sometimes it takes a lot of work to get it cleaned out, because that residual ink, if it's highly saturated just a little bit, will actually flow color. And I'm expelling it on a different section of the sink just so I can see if that color's changed and has gone mostly clear. So that has gone mostly clear. I can just see a few, just a tiny little blue tint, but that is actually mostly fairly clear. So I'm going to set that one aside. And then I've got the Renew Point, the Esterbrook nib. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the Visconti. Nice and clear now. So for a $30 ultrasonic cleaner, it actually does pretty good. So I'm going to put this baby back in my ultrasonic cleaner. And you should see the ink inside that ultrasonic cleaner now. It's actually good and blue because of all the blue ink. Now, I'm going to do one last pen for you. And this nib, that looks nice and clean for that Wing Sung. Now, I'm going to do a lever filler. Lever fillers, to me, I love them. They're great pens. I work on them. They're easy to restore and work on, but they suck to clean. So, essentially what you're going to do is if you're not going to pull apart the section and pull this completely out, you're going to sit there and do the suck it in, suck it out, suck it in, suck it out thing. You got to get the lever up. There you go. So it's going to be suck it in, expel it. Suck it in, and you're going to go through a lot of water doing it. In, out, and you can hear it. I'll flush it out just so you can see better. And no, I'm not zooming in and out because I'm a one-man band here with one camera for the shoot. Okay, so in and out. Lever down, lever up. Let it suck in some water. Lever down, lever up. Lever down, lever up. Let it suck in some ink. And then, now you can do it this way if you want. Personally, I like to do it this way where I go in and out in the water. So out water, in water, out water, in water. But you can bring it up where you suck in some water, out, expel it. Personally, I like it this way. That's so I can see how much clearer my water is getting as I go along. And I can actually watch the expulsion of water, ink-tainted water, coming out of that section, out of that nib and feed. And I can see how close I am to getting it clean. The other neat thing is you can see the chromatography a whole lot better. When you got a black ink, you can see actually how much brown is in that ink. I wish it was kind of a much closer shot for you, but sorry. But basically, you're going to sit here like this all day. I say all day, it seems like it, but it's really not. But it's going to take longer to do a lever filler. That's the only bad thing about them is if you want to call this maintenance, is the cleanup behind them. You're never ever going to get these 100% clean on a lever filler, with the exception of like the Esterbrook or an Osmoroid, where you actually have the renew point or the removable nib on those. Like I showed you earlier, you are going to have to go in, out constantly. Here I'm shaking the water inside that ink sac, hoping to be able to help clean it out a little bit. You can see I got a little more black ink out that way. That's to the point now where you can just about call it clean, because it's about as clean as a lever filler is going to get. Alright, how about an eyedropper? An eyedropper filler, like an old Camlin, pretty much the same way. Although, same way as like the Esterbrook that I showed you. What I want to do is run it through, and I want to flush this out the best I can like this. Get as much ink as I can out the easy way. You notice I don't put this on full bore. Alright, water's flowing fairly clear out of that. You can tell it's a fairly stubborn ink that I was using here in this little Camlin. I think this is Matthew's old pen. So I'm going to run that through my ultrasonic cleaner as well. Alright, how about ink converters that are a little more stubborn? Here's a Jean-Pierre Lepine pen that I bought from Papier Plume in New Orleans last summer. It needs to be cleaned out. Alright, so I'm going to flush that out a little bit. And you see it's still got a lot of blue ink. I think I used Papier Plume Forget-Me-Not Blue in this one. But how about, see there's still ink in that converter, so I'm going to flush down, use its own stopper, its own little plunger and screw jack, in and out, in and out, in and out, which usually doesn't go as long as, let's say you were on a lever filler at all. Now, you see how there's still some stubborn ink, that residue that's in this thing? Here's another trick that I learned on my own. You get an old cup, fill this syringe with water, and you can insert it right in here and flush it out if you have to. Usually I do this in the most stubborn ink cases. Usually most of it comes out, but I knew that this ink was going to be fairly stubborn, so it's a nice ink. Actually, I just put it in another pen that I'm using, the same ink, but you squirt it in. And let's say you got just a bubble of ink that's left inside of there that you can't get rid of, just a bubble of water with tainted. Sometimes you can just go suck it in, and that will get the last of it out. So, let me show you what I do with these pens once I've got them ready to roll. Let's set this one aside. After these pens have been cleaned, well, first thing I want to do, wipe my hands off, get these out of my way. So, I've got my Esterbrook pen, right? The one I showed you a little bit earlier. Here's the Esterbrook renew point that goes in. Screw them together. I'm going to put the cap on it, and then I'm going to sit it in here and let it dry at least overnight. So, pretty easy, huh? Not bad at all. Well, let's go ahead and get another one. Let's go ahead and do my Visconti. do it the same way. Screw it together. I typically will go ahead and put them back in their normal working order, wipe it down. I'm going to go set it in there to dry. Here is the lever filler that I worked on. I'm going to put the cap on the back, lay it in that same thing to dry. Let's see, what else have I got? Oh yeah, I've got, I believe, this one here that I worked on. Put the converter back in it. I keep that converter all the way down. Put it back in. Post it. You can't really post this one, no big deal. Set it in to dry. So you get the idea. And that's how I've shown you how to clean one of each of the different major filling systems. You know, the power vac, the lever filler, the cartridge, and the converter together in the same kind of filling system. I've shown you the lever filler, I've shown you the eyedropper. So you get the idea. You just have to develop your own rhythm. Now, something else that I need to show you that you're going to want to have if you're going to do something like this. You are going to want some kind of cleaner. And I actually have here in my house something like this. I like to use this one, Comet, not necessarily because of the brand, but because it's got bleach in it. And that will help clean up any of these ink spots that you see that are all over my sink. I'm going to rinse the sink down really well. And I've got one of these cleaning sponges. You can tell I've been giving it a workout previously. But I'm going to scrub down this whole sink and get it back to looking fairly white, or at least as white as it could be. I'm going to make sure that nothing goes down that drain. So there you go. Those are all the major tools that you're going to need, some of the techniques that you're going to need. It is really this simple. It's just a little bit of time consumption involved. So develop your own rhythm. I like to go through all my cartridge converters first, get those done out of the way, throw about 5 of them in my ultrasonic cleaner or so, and then start working on the next batch to go in the ultrasonic cleaner once that batch is done. And then I save all my lever fillers for last because they are so long and boring. And I actually pull a stool up to this sink and I sit down when I work on those. Flow in, flow out. Flow in, flow out. But there you go. You guys asked to see it. That's how it's done. Feel free to make your own ink flush or your own pen flush. I've got a video for that. And these are the basic techniques that you need for how to clean your own pens.